listening to Muslimish Freethinkers, a podcast dedicated to fostering conversations on matters of faith and disbelief.
Or anything, and enter that code. That'll take you to a screen where you can enter your question. You can see what other questions are being asked. You can upvote those if you think those are interesting questions to ask the panel. Okay, so we'll just use that as a first set of questions to get going. So firstly, thank you all again for being on this panel and discussing these issues with us. First, I want to ask about some current issues. For example, recently in Birmingham, there was opposition to curricula about LGBT students, about LGBT issues being taught to young children at school, and that opposition primarily came from the area's Muslims. I don't know if you've heard about this, but this was a bit of an issue recently, and of course, in many places it comes primarily from Christians, but when there's this other front, I suppose, there's a bit of a confusion on what exactly to do about the situation. So I'd like to ask for your opinions, especially MPV, on how you would approach this kind of tension.
Parents are against education. Oh, okay. And Muslim parents too.
So for the type of work that we do around LGBTQI identified Muslims in the area, I don't know how many of you know, but as a community organizer, I know that there is over 500 LGBTQI identified Muslims here in the Boston area. And when we do events and stuff like that, oftentimes you leave out a big portion of them, right? And I think the real problem there, that is lack of inclusion, right? There is also people dealing with things with their own identity, and then going to Muslim spaces and being Muslims, but then outside they have a different life, and many don't even have a choice to be out there, right? In terms of parents, and I'm going to drift the focus over to the parents in the UK area, that whole opposition about teaching people about the LGBT identities and stuff like that. I'm not a parent, so I can't really talk about the fact that, but as a parent in general, if I was in their shoes, I would be more concerned about people teaching them Islam who are not qualified to teach them Islam. Such as some imams that are not even like high school educated, right? They are just taught a certain way. There is a lot of religious and political so I wouldn't say religious, but mostly political bias that plays into it. So they've taken that political bias and the cultural aspects of it, and then the so-called 100% man-made Sharia, and then twisted it around to teach people a certain ideology that they've been wanting to teach, just so that the heterosexual man can stay in power and keep oppressing, women and LGBTQ identified identities onto the margins of the community. So if I was a parent, I'll be more opposed to them teaching my children. I would be more careful about my kids getting taught something wrong. What is wrong with kids learning about LGBT identity? I don't understand that. I do not understand that. A couple of weeks ago, I've got a phone call from a lawyer who somehow got our contact information from online and reached out to ask what we can do in a situation where a 13-year-old had come out to their parents, and the parents are, in the process of, or literally ostracizing them and stuff. So these are some serious issues that a lot of LGBTQ identified Muslims have been facing, and there is no other way around it. You want your kids to learn about these things. They're gonna live in this world. They're gonna encounter gays, lesbians, transgenders, bisexual, people of all faith, people of all nationalities, just like you want them to learn about the history, math, and science. Why don't you want them to learn about the identities of people that they're going to be encountering, or could be one of them? So either they're going to get bullied for who they are, or they'll be bullying other kids because they're not educated themselves, right? They're not educating that these are also human, just like you and I, who choose to love other human, right? So, or they'll have things that, what was that guy's name? Mateen something, the shooter for Pulse, right? A lot of internalized homophobia. A lot of internalized homophobia is what you're seeing there, right? The fact that he was a part of a queer community, I'm not going to go down the route of how he identified himself, that's still in a silo and whatnot. But in all reality, there's just a lot of internalized homophobia in Muslim communities. And that needs to fade away. Our organization, Muslims for Progressive Value, we're challenging those. We're running campaigns that ask preachers to not teach homophobia. This is absolutely something that needs to happen. People are living a life that they're living outside, but when they go back to their Muslim communities, they don't have, in traditionalist, communities, they don't have the luxury to be who they are, right? So this is a serious problem, and it's ongoing over and over and over again. A lot of people then, adapt this thing where they're constantly in this struggle of finding themselves, right? That is the problem, in the struggle of finding themselves. And somewhere there was this guy named Mateen that got lost, and he had 50 million other issues and ended up going and, doing the horrific thing that he did. It scares us all. It does scare us all. Okay.
Thank you. Do you want to add something?
A comment.
Sure, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to add, finishing up what it scared us all. It's this creation of fear in the hearts of children who happen to simply have an identity that doesn't fit in the binary box. It is important that we allow our children to discover themselves, that we don't create boys do this, girls do that. And I'll give you an example of how this is actually already working in an open education. In my daughter's school, the teacher was putting together projects for passports. And so the little kids in first grade are making passports, and she asked them, well, if you identify as a boy, put an M for male. If you identify as a girl, put an F for female. And if you identify as non-binary, put an NB. And the kids asked, well, what does non-binary mean? She said, well, non-binary is if you're not sure, or if those two are just not for you. You don't want to be, or you feel you're something else. So she collected the passports, and over 50% of that classroom identified as NB, non-binary. And when she asked the children, how come you put an NB? They say, we just want to be community. We don't want to be girls this, boys that. And some of us just simply don't know yet. So let's be clear. If you think that gender identity and the rights to gender identity are something in the future, then wake up. Our children know. Our children always knew. The only thing that we have to make sure they have is an education that allows them that freedom of identity. So one of the major issues that we've seen when those identities are being squashed are mental health issues earlier and later in life. We've seen crime, as Candia mentioned. So we see the repercussions in our society. What we need to do is to just be just and be brave and have an education that caters to the rights of our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Colin?
Yeah. So it doesn't surprise me that there are Muslim parents who don't want their kids to learn about LGBT people. I mean, that's how religion survives, is by keeping kids brainwashed. That's why there's religious people in the world today, after all the scientific discoveries that we have. Is by brainwashing children from an early age to believe that there's a right way and there's a wrong way. And if you do this, you're going to go to hell and you're going to burn in fire. And what I feel it needs to be done is, one, discuss clearly the many texts in Islam that that say that homosexuality is wrong, is one. From 2 points of view, in my mind. From one point of view is my own, which is, this is wrong, period, and nobody should follow it. Or, this is wrong and we should fix it. Either way, it has to be discussed directly. There are texts that are, I don't know if you can really consider religious schools really schools, or Al-Azhar really a university, but, people do consider it that way. I mean, you have people who yes, a lot of imams don't even have a secondary school education, but they have this, a lot of other, what they call education, but it's just studying religious texts that are just ridiculous. It's like someone had been spending their entire life studying Humpty Dumpty, and then coming to you and telling you, Humpty Dumpty said this. And I'm like, who cares what Humpty Dumpty, like, this should not be, this should not, like if you're going to teach children about this stuff, teach them about that this is what what people used to think in the past. These are ancient texts that really are what people used before they had states, before they had laws, before all of that stuff. And we need to learn about it in order to move on from it. But we have to discuss the texts, the religious texts that are discriminatory against women and LGBT people and non-Muslims and Christians and Jews and atheists. There are texts in Islam that's what Islam teaches. So that's my opinion.
You want to respond?
Sure. So, I think a counter narrative to that, in my opinion, and what we believe is that there is, if there was one or two verses in Quran that talk about male, being in a, I guess more of a lustful relationship, taking out their lust onto another male, that pertains to a certain group of people at a certain time, right? When you look at it from an egalitarian mindset to see what is right and what's wrong, there is a huge gap in between that, right? So I would say that yes, we have a right of freedom to express our faith how we want it to be, right? So if somebody is LGBTI identified and they find themselves liberated in their faith, right? And here we're talking about Muslims that are LGBT identified. For anybody to go out there and preach what homosexuality is or not, especially if they don't identify as such, it has no meaning, right? It's useless, because if you're not a part of that identity, for you to be saying that you can't be Muslim or LGBT identified, it has no meaning to me, right? So that is where people like me, organizers, come into play to allow that space for people. Like Hassan mentioned earlier, it is a serious issue. We have people dealing with a lot of mental and psychological trauma, not because of who they are, but because of the way they're treated within the Muslim communities, right? And that goes the same thing to somebody who wants to not follow the faith that they are a part of in Muslim communities, right? So while we find ways for them, while we find religious context that says, things related to homosexuality and LGBT identified things, everything in the spectrum, Muslims and progressive values, we believe that Allah made all colors of the rainbow. Okay? So be yourself and be you. And there is nobody else. I don't think many LGBT identified Muslims have this luxury to be who they are, right? But when it comes to Islam, there is a marriage or a union between two adult souls. Okay, there is no gender specification that says a man should marry a woman should marry a man. No, there is no gender specification to why two people would then be considered it's a sin. In my personal opinion, if homosexuality was that big of a problem, then why is being a heterosexual not one of the 5 pillars of Islam?
All right. Well, moving on to the next topic. So this is about the hijab, basically, and there are some murmurs among ex-Muslims, among primarily Muslims who are not hijabis, about like when, for example, the media wants to depict like a Muslim woman, they almost always like go for a hijabi as the representative, and also you can see this in, for example, the poster that was used in the women's march, where they had in red, white, and blue. They had the woman wearing a hijab flag, and things like try on a hijab day, and those kinds of things. And also in recent events when the shooting happened in New Zealand at the mosques, and many people were killed, and in solidarity, there were these calls for non-Muslims to wear the hijab as a sign of solidarity, right? But then there's also concerns that it doesn't really represent all Muslim women. So I'm just want to get your opinions about the hijab as a form of protest or as a political symbol, and especially as a political symbol which ostensibly represents Muslims, and how non-hijabi Muslims would deal with that.
I'll take it. Okay, since I spoke about hijab before, I'll take the lead on answering. So the way I view hijab is as any of the identities in the spectrum, right? So a woman has a right to her body. If a woman wants to cover her hair because of her spirituality, because of whatever she chose for herself, because of how she wants to communicate her being and her style in the world and who she wants to be, then that is her right. That simply is that. As long as there's no coercion into wearing a scarf. If a woman is wearing a scarf because she's afraid that family member is going to beat her, or that her husband is going to divorce her, or that people are going to spit on her in the street if she doesn't, then that is a problem of everyone in society, and that is wrong. So, as someone who enjoys living in the liberties in America, I would totally wear the scarf in solidarity if that meant that I'm coming out to support the people who are feeling hurt that their communities are being attacked based on their faith. I would do the same thing in going to a synagogue and joining prayer on a Friday night. And if I'm asked to wear something in solidarity, a color or anything else, I would treat it the same way. Now, we have to also recognize that there have been women who came forth and said, I will not wear the hijab because I want to, show that there's injustice behind forcing women to cover and that is sexist, right? And what we need to be able to see is that these things are not contrasting each other. These people, the ones who are saying wear the hijab in solidarity with women, and the ones who are saying don't wear the hijab in solidarity with women, are all in solidarity with women. And what they are communicating is just basically, get out of my way. Get out of my business. I'm a woman. I want to wear whatever I want, whether I choose to put it on or take it off. I don't want you to judge me or judge who I am based on what I'm wearing. That is the question that they're asking. So for me, I would do either way. I'll go out and wear the scarf. What if I choose not to wear it today? I won't wear it today. That doesn't take away from my identity as a Muslim or not. From a personal story, when I took off my scarf and came to America, my brother told me that I'm not a Muslim anymore. Okay? Because he believed that when a woman takes off the scarf, she revokes her faith. And that is oppression. That is how, he thought he was right because he wants to be pious, and those were his beliefs. But I believe that is against the freedom of myself as a woman, as a person. And although, we didn't talk for a year, but he came around. He came around because he realized that I'm his sister, that I share his blood, that I love him, and that whether I have the scarf on or not, I love him unconditionally. I help him, I help his children go to school. I'm a human. So once he realized that there's a human here, not whatever goes on my head, then all of that anger was gone. And we were able to become brother and sister again. Thank you. May I?
not to minimalize this issue, but I think representation of non-hijabi Muslim women in the U.S. is the least of our problems. I think there are so many things that we need to focus on that I think this is just not. It's a very. I really shouldn't say it's a small problem, but it is a small problem in the compared to everything else that we really have to deal with. Second is that the hijab is a very easy symbol for Islam, for a Muslim woman, and I think that it's very easy to rally around symbols. So I see why people would want to use a hijab as a symbol for a Muslim woman. I took off the hijab after the 9/11 attacks because my very religious mother told us after there were some Muslim women attacked because they are wearing the hijab. I mean, I think that's a very clear symbol of your Muslim identity. So this is why like my mom's children, including me, removed the hijab. So I think it's a very easy symbol to rally around, and I don't think it's I don't know. I shouldn't say it's not a big deal, but.
I'm sorry, after you.
I may disagree with my brothers and sisters, so I see it a big issue. It's a big issue. When you come as a politician or someone has influence and you put the hijab, you are sending a message to Ihsan brother that it is right. And he will tell her, look, your president is wearing the hijab, and you are rejecting your religion and your tradition. See this famous woman, this powerful woman is wearing the hijab. And do you see the difference here? So, if you want to show solidarity to Muslims, okay, do something else. Something like kill some animals to show that, yeah. Or not, because that's what all Muslims do. They kill animals once per year, okay? And they go to Hajj, so go to Hajj to show your solidarity. Go and take some stones and throw it on other stones. That's how you show that you are Muslim. And you will find some peace of mind there. I will tell you. Because if you don't have enough spirituality, you will find a lot of peace there. Or, yeah, something all Muslims do. Do you know what's that? Go perform circumcision. All Muslims does it. All Muslims. For yourself. To yourself, not to your children. That's how you show that you are a real Muslim. But when you wear hijab, no. You are saying, I am with the man who made women put the hijab. And I will tell you something. The hijab was imposed by Omar, not even by Muhammad. The man who was insisting on putting hijab in the Quran, he was Omar. So, and he was the one, Omar, who made prostitution illegal, not Muhammad. The Hajj, people used to do prostitution in the Hajj. It was a tradition. Omar take it out. Omar made Muhammad write in the Quran that the hijab is very important. So, we should not take it easy. It's not a small issue. It's a very big issue. If we want to be just, I am not talking about you want to do something for politics. Yes, you are doing good as politician, but you are doing it very, very wrong for the history, for the human values. I talked to many women who took the hijab off, hundreds and hundreds. And there is none of them told me that she was putting the hijab and she was enjoying it. None of them. All of them, they told me it was a horrible experience. But I did it for God, or I did it for my community, or I did it for my brothers and my father, or for my mother, or myself. Yes, some of them, she put the hijab because she was fearing to be tortured. She was doing the hijab because she wanted to please God. But she was deluded. So many, those Muslims, those women, none of them was regretting taking it off. Okay? Putting hijab is not a choice. Taking the hijab off is a choice. If you can't take the hijab off, don't tell me it's a choice. You have no choice at all. And that's what we need to show to people everywhere. That's what I think should be. Taking hijab should be related to feminism, progressive values. That's if you want to support Muslims, progressive Muslims, show these women who took the hijab, show their experiences, show their stories, and be beside them. That's how you show your support to Muslims and to progressive values.
Would you like to respond?
Yeah.
Sure. After. Okay. I would like to add something for the question. Is that Malala Yousafzai, a Nobel Prize winner, she said no one should ever tell a woman how to dress, right? So when we talk about the issue of wearing hijab or not wearing hijab, I think a big part of what a lot of traditionalist ideology believing Muslims don't talk about is, so there is so much focus on wearing a hijab and enforcing it and making it sound like that is the only thing that would bring them close to God, when there is scholars like Javed Gandhi who has provided scriptures that says, there is two modesties, right? So there is modesty for males and there is modesty for females, right? That modesty of female just has so much focus in our Muslim communities that you can clearly tell everybody talks about hijab. Oh, she took it off, she wear it, she took it off, she's dressing this way, she's dressing that way. I'm so privileged as a male, I rarely hear anything about, oh, did you see him walking out of that strip club? Did you see him walking out of that whatever bar around the corner? Did you see him picking up somebody in their car? Or did you see him, claiming that they're dating someone on Facebook? Yeah, this is where the gender bias comes in. I think it doesn't come necessarily from the teachings of Islam. I think it comes from the Muslim culture, which has enforced it onto. There is a modesty for men, which is the modesty of vision, right? Modesty of vision. Have you ever heard that? No. Everybody's looking at me like, what is that now? Which is not to sexualize females, which is not to objectify them, which is not to put them in like a little bubble and have them grow there when they're meant to grow just like everybody else. So we're leaving, a big part of our community just by marginalizing it on the side. MTV is the only space where you would find no criticism on anybody dressing up however they want. And that's how it should be. It all should come down to choice, because we do have a freedom of interpreting scriptures how they should be interpreted in the most humane way.
Thank you. So this
this idea that only a woman who's not wearing the scarf is a progressive woman. So I thought maybe if I put the scarf on right now and you look at me, right, do I look less progressive? Did it change? Is it a different person back here? I'm still me, right? I am the progressive. Call me progressive. I don't even call myself progressive. I call myself a Muslim person by faith and by spirituality. That's who I am. Whether I choose to put the scarf on or take it off is my choice. And your judgment to who I am, that's up to you. I can't change that. You can judge however you want. But I would ask of you to judge with a kind eye. Judge with a peaceful eye. If you are a Muslim or you are of any faith, and you want peace in this world, and you want unity, and you want us to be strong, then we have to be able to look at each other with an eye of freedom. Okay? With an eye that frees me from whatever a piece of cloth was judged me as. You know, when I chose to marry my husband, I chose him for a very profound reason. And this was before I even thought I didn't even know what faith he has. I knew that was the person that I'm going to spend most of my life with. I say most. You never know, right? So I was in his parents' house, and they were the first family to host me when I came to America. And so they had a one floor. I was in a shower, and I'm wrapped in my towel, and I'm going to go to my bedroom, which used to be their living room. They gave me their living room, and that's now my bedroom. And as I'm crossing, I see my husband across the hall. And he saw me in my towel and turned around and walked away. I had never, ever experienced such respect in my 20 years before coming to America. Not from my cousins, not from my neighbors, not from my teachers, not from the elderly in the neighborhood, not from my brother's friends. When I say I'm a survivor between the age of 3 and 17 in Morocco. I've experienced so much that if I were to say, oh, well, all those people were Muslims, how come they didn't respect me, and how come they molested me and they raped me? Well, then maybe I shouldn't be a Muslim anymore. Then I would be a complete failure. Then I wouldn't be standing for every woman out there and every person out there who wants to identify with this faith, right? How would I be allowing freedom of others if I don't allow freedom for myself? That is my freedom. My freedom is to explore my life, is to explore my faith as something that takes me into experience. Life happens. Life will challenge you. And how you're going to find that relationship that keeps you strong and keeps you going and sees the beauty in the world. That is what my faith comes from. Not from a scarf and not from judgment, right? I say that if a man can stand and be connected and pray when there are naked women surrounding him, then that might tell me something about how deep his spirituality is. Thank you.
Wait, can I say something?
Yeah, sure, okay.
Because I just feel like the panel did a really great job of explaining the hijab wearing from like two different points of view. So one as a symbol of oppression, the other as a symbol of empowerment, or women have the choice to wear whatever they want. But the real tricky part is in the middle of those two thoughts. So I think, here's how I think about it. When I walk down the street and I see lots of people wearing hijabs, every time the question that pops into my head is, are they choosing to wear it? And I don't know. And I think that's the tricky part. And every other woman I see on the street, whatever she's wearing, I don't think about it. I know she's wearing whatever she's wearing because she wants to, and I don't care. But when I see a woman wearing a hijab, it's complicated because I have to ask that question. I just don't know. And I think that's what I'd really like to hear the panel try to answer.
Yeah, just a quick question. I'm not sure if you've seen, other people, for example, going to church wearing hats, or on the Sabbath wearing longer skirts or wearing specific cloths or colors. Do you ask the same question?
No, I don't, because as far as I'm aware, in other faiths, people aren't forced to wear things. It's not the same symbol where I understand in Muslim countries where women against their will are forced to wear it.
It's the law. It's the law in many countries.
So that's why I don't ask that question when I see people wearing other religious symbols or clothing. Or whatever.
Right. Well, I think that in many ways we do believe that faith is a freedom here in America, but we also know that there are people who are being coerced into their faith, either families who would say to their children, I'm not going to pay for your college tuition unless you go to the mosque, whether you're male or female or queer, any identity. You could be threatened by family or threatened by friends to exclude you, etc. So forms of oppression do exist, but that doesn't give us the right to just judge based on how somebody decided for themselves to dress.
I agree with you. This is a question I don't externalize, but the reality is it's a concern because you said it's a real problem, but how do we deal with that? And the only way I think of dealing with it is to shut up and say nothing and hope that those people can. I just pray that they aren't in the category of people that are being forced and I'm just being irrational or something,
Right.
But the reality is some of them are.
I always say ask, don't assume. And it's okay to ask.
I feel like it's
It's the same way.
All right, I think we'll. Sorry.
Just very small, it's kind of related. I actually think a very similar thing whenever I see women with the 6-inch stilettos walking down the street. I might be biased, but I always assume that that's probably because of society is forcing them to do that. Maybe that's not always the case, but that's I think that might be something fair to think about, but it's not something that I don't.
Societal pressures and laws are different.
Okay, I think we just.
I mean, people are.
Sorry, I think we'll just return to the panel for. Yeah.
You might want to say something.
Yeah, I think you have a very good point, and this is why we need more research about the psychology of Muslim women. Like this gentleman here mentioned, the society, of course, has a lot to do with our choices. So I think even sometimes we say we choose to do something, but maybe we don't actually. So one thing that I study a lot is subconscious bias and how that influences us. And I think this could be an issue of that. And I think your point is completely valid and it's a good question. And I don't know I think if somebody asked me while I was wearing the hijab if it was a choice or not, I don't know if I would react well, to be honest. So I think your concern is a valid one, but offending someone, I think might not be, it's not the worst thing in the world. I think definitely it's not. So ask your questions when you need to.
So, regarding this question, I will talk a little bit about myself. When I was young, nobody forced me to become a Muslim, to become a religious person. People around me were not religious. Nobody was religious in the whole village. Nobody, except my grandma. She went to do Hajj. She sold her land. She went to do Hajj. That was something very, very impressive, very important for her. She was always talking about this experience. And I found some books. In the school, they teach us how to be a good man, and it's related to religion. That's what we learn in the school. So, I was a good student. I applied what I learned. And I started preaching everyone to convert them to become good Muslims. I even helped to weave a mask. That's what I did. Because they teach me that's how to be a good man. Okay? So, do we choose? Okay? Sometimes we choose, but I didn't choose to be circumcision. I didn't choose that. I was crying. Okay? It was the worst day in my life. I didn't forget it. I was crying. I didn't cry even. I was, no, you can't cry. My brother was crying. But me, I was just this pain. It's not a pleasant experience. It's not at all. Okay? So, after that, I learned other stuff. Okay? And I was a progressive Muslim I was a Islamic leader. I was extremist. Okay? In different ways, different experiences. Then I became progressive Muslim. Then I started supporting women's rights because they teach us in Islam you can't be progressive. So I tried, but I tried to be a progressive Muslim. I even wrote something like a book. Then I failed because I was extremist again. Islam, you can't be progressive and Muslim. You can't support gay and be Muslim. You can't say women should take same as men from the heritage. You can't. I mean, you can say it here in the United States, of course. And they will say, yes, you are a hero. But if you say it in Morocco, they will hang you. Or Sudan, or Egypt, or Saudi, or somewhere. So, you can be, they will look you here, normal person. But they will not look at you, a normal person in my country. They started calling me atheist before I became atheist. I am not atheist, I am just a confused person. So what I am saying, so sometimes, yes, I did this choice. Nobody forced me to become a religious person, to pray, to preserve the Quran, the whole Quran, to change my major, okay? I had, my high school diploma was chemical engineering, okay? I supposed to go to do to do science college, but I want to study Islamic studies. I want just to become something like pastor here, imam or something. That's what I want to become. I made this choice. It was a wrong choice, okay? I will say I made this choice. Yes, I made it. I was a young, fool person. I still fool. But I made this choice. Maybe not, because all the books I found there, what they teach me in the school, was to condition me. It was a condition to me. It wasn't education. Yes, I get good education in science, but I get very wrong education because they teach me Islam and to hate Jewish and to hate Christian people and to hate women and to think that women less than men. So I made choice. I thought I made choice, but I was deluded. They deluded me because they said God create us. God. So you go to the Islamic studies teacher. He will teach you God create Adam and Eve, and you go to the natural science and he will teach you evolution. Which of you are right? Of course, the man with the beard. That's the right, because he is talking in the name of the God. The other one was just another professor, another teacher. So that's why someone talking with the word of the God, you think you have choice and you did the right choice. But he was deluding you, and he was deceiving you, and that's what is important. I say, yes, there is some women are putting hijab by choice. Okay, there is, like me, like I made choices. But there is a lot of women who are putting hijab because they are forced to do. They have no choice at all. And those, a lot, They are not the minority. They are a lot. Because in Europe now, if a Muslim, if they saw a woman Muslim without hijab in Europe street, they call her names. They call the B word. Why? Because she is walking in Netherlands or in France or in UK because she is walking without hijab and they know from her face she is a Moroccan. Yes, that's what happened in Europe. And maybe one day it will happen here.
No way.
One day have a community and one day have a mosque and one day have a no-go zone. Just Muslims. That's what they will do. And you will put the hijab and you will say, yes, that was my choice. I did the hijab because it was choice. You did the hijab because you had no choice, or they will call you by names in the street. That's how you did the hijab. You still have choice.
Actually, this is a related question on the topic of the hijab. It kind of relates to what I wanted to also bring the question towards. Question from the audience. I run a support blog for anyone recovering from religious trauma, and we get many messages from young people raised Muslim about wanting to heal from fear of hell, physically leave an abusive religious household, cope with internalized guilt when going without hijab in public, etc. Can your organizations offer any recommendations or resources for supporting these people?
I'm going to start taking that one.
You wanted to?
Yeah, I'll
Okay,
take
sure.
that. So, part of the work we do in Muslimish is that we talk about our religious experiences and why we believe or don't believe. And that, I think, serves almost as a therapy session, like a group therapy, almost. Just everybody sharing their experiences. And, I think for, what I hear, since I started the group in New York, I've had the most experience in meeting people. And sometimes I hear when I say something that's very blasphemous or very anti-religion, people say that made them feel like, oh my God, like I thought you're gonna be struck by lightning, but nothing happened. And it's almost reassuring for people to see others who have went through that journey and came out the other way, okay? I think that helps. And I hope that in the future, one of our goals is we work with other secular groups. One of the groups that I feel is very, very, I love them really, is called Footsteps. They are for ultra-Orthodox Jews. Yeah. And they have their stuff, I want to say they have their shit together. They have like a social worker, they have therapists, they have people. So I hope that one day Muslimish is going to be able to do that, or at least in the meantime, be able to point people towards these resources, because I think with nonprofit organizations we have to be able to refer. We can't do everything. We don't have enough, so we have to be able to refer people to the help when they need it. So cooperating and creating alliances with other groups that have these resources, I think is going to be helpful. And I think just being able to talk about it freely is helpful for people, because they see others that went through similar stuff, and we share it, and then we're okay now. We're free here. I mean, we can do what we want. We can speak freely. We can go out and party and we can speak freely, which is, I think, a therapeutic experience. If you haven't done this in public, especially if you come from, because most of our members in Muslimish, at least that I can speak about, I would say the far majority of our members are either first or second generation immigrants. We come from these places. We come from Middle Earth. Middle Earth is where we come from. A place where you cannot choose. You cannot choose your religion. Religion is an ID card. You cannot choose what you're going to wear. And to have that freedom and be able to practice it, I think helps. I think it's therapeutic. And also meeting with other people from different backgrounds, ex-Christians, ex-Jews, ex-Buddhists, whatever, people who have been through that journey and seeing the similarities, I think also is helpful.
So I'm hearing so many X's. I'm like, where is this going? It's really funny. Yes. So I think that to allow that support, right, not only for people that are going outside of the faith, but to live within the faith and still be, who they are, which is often something that is marginalized, right? So our organization provides a lot of that support if they're a part of our group. There is imams and imamas that wouldn't judge you for who you are and who you're marrying and where you come from, because we look at it from the lens of love and compassion, okay? And when you look at things from a love and compassion way, you tell yourself, yes, I can be Muslim and I can be progressive. I don't think that I've ever felt as Muslim as I do now, because my whole life I've been very liberal on so many different levels, that people often were confused. They're like, oh, I didn't think you were a Muslim. I get that a lot, including people that know me or don't know me, right? So for me to reconcile that progressiveness that I see around me and in the world, and to still be able to live my faith, I think that's what liberated me.
Thank you.
For me, the question is about, whether, the question that we are given is whether you do fit in a box or you don't. Are you Muslim or are you not Muslim? The box says if you're Muslim, you have to believe in X, Y, Z, and you have to do X, Y, Z, dress like this, pray behind men, pray only in this form, only at these times, yada yada. That's the box. And if you don't go by it, then you're not Muslim. To me, I say ditch the box. I don't want to be part of any box, right? This is my freedom. This is my identity, and I build it however I want in whatever spectrum I want. And that is why I am in America, and that is what I will make America to be, and to continue to be this place where we don't have to be conformed into a box that we feel like we don't belong to or doesn't fit who we are. We create our communities, right? We find solidarity with other people, either with, I might like some of the stuff that Islamish is saying, and I might like, some of the stuff that, Kandil is saying, but it doesn't mean I agree with all of it. I agree with some of it, and some of it is part of some things that I have experienced in life and that I have brought to the surface and I share, and other people might disagree with me, and that's all right. And that is what it's like to live in freedom. Yes, where I came from or where other Muslim countries are, majority Muslim, are struggling, and yes, there are people who have this dream for their life to be able to live in a country like this and be able to speak have this discussion that we're having today. This you don't get to have this. You get jailed for having this. That is a reality, and that is why we're here and we're not there, right? That is why many immigrant generations have come to this land and didn't stay elsewhere. They came here because they sought freedom for their identity as Irish, their identity as Jews, their identity as Italian, their identity as Muslim, their identity as, as atheist or as nothing or as confused, right? Whatever they want. They wanted a place where we can come together and be who we are. And that is, for me, worth the fight. It's definitely worth the fight. I wanted to mention, why do I say it's worth the fight? And why I don't say it's somewhere where, I don't live in some kind of imaginary heaven. This is a place where our freedom is being threatened every day. This is a place where we are being threatened as Muslim. We're also being threatened as not Muslim enough. This is a place where a friend of mine, who I met in Morocco, she was homeless. and she had been blinded by a family member and thrown at the doorstep of a hospital. She was picked up by an organization who taught her how to read Braille. And when I met her, she wanted to take the train from Casablanca to Rabat. And they wouldn't let her get on the train without being accompanied by an adult, simply because she's blind. That's another, how you see how the disabled are being treated within a Muslim country where our values are to take care of the vulnerable, right? So later on, I was able to contact some folks and became her mentor, and she's now in the U.S. Under scholarship studying journalism. She got connected with some folks of a Christian faith, and they've been helping her. And they would tell her that she has to go to church every Sunday. And she would call me and say, "Hassan, they're telling me to go to church every Sunday. I'm not Christian. I'm not Muslim. I am an atheist, and I don't want to go to church." And I tell her, "So what if you don't go? What's going to happen?" And she says, "Well, if I don't go, nobody's going to come and help me get from my place to the bus, or help me if I burn the food on the stove and I'm figuring out how to turn off the fire, and I only have the number of this person who lives close by, and she's going to come help me, and my life is going to become really hard." And so she called us the other day, and she was crying. She's like, "I'm being coerced to join a religion that I don't believe in, and I'm worried that they would just send me back to Morocco. Well, I'll be, probably stoned to death because I've come out on Facebook and say that I am an atheist." So she's stuck. She's stuck in America. She's stuck in between all of these different groups who are pushing her. You're not Muslim, now you're not worthy of life, or you're not Christian, now you're not worthy of our help. And that is a struggle. That is a struggle that's worth fighting for. A person like this shouldn't live without freedom in America. A person like this should be the future of America, right? She's a blinded person who is studying journalism, and she always tells me, "I want to be the voice of the voiceless." That is her goal in life. These are the people who come to America and make America a greater place, a better place. And we make this a better place for all of us by amplifying folks like my friend. And I'm omitting her name because I want to protect her. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so one thing I wanted to ask, which came up as an issue recently, was not so much blasphemy, I guess, but just irreverence and how the culture of religious mockery, irreverence in America and in the West in general. Charlie Hebdo is one example, I suppose, but closer to home, you have, for example, in 1997, CARE got Nike shoes withdrawn, had a recall because there was a logo on the shoe that looked like the word Allah. Just coincidentally, in 2007 it was jeans with an imprint of some Quranic verse on it. 2008, some game had some music which had some Quranic thing in it. And 2019 recently, they got some doormats withdrawn from Amazon because they had some Quranic calligraphy in it. And although you can actually get doormats with biblical verses on it, and apparently no problem. So
you can
it's just
toilet paper. You can get toilet paper with.
You can get Jesus on a tongue.
Yeah.
So
you can get a Jesus stripper if you want.
Yeah. So it's just like I'm just wondering, is this like a productive pursuit for organizations like CARE? Because it seems like Christianity takes a lot of punishment in terms of irreverence in the US. And like stuff like this, putting it on jeans or even shoes or whatever is okay. But I'm wondering if this actually increases the amount of anti-Muslim bigotry, like recalling these, campaign to have these things recalled, throwing a fit at any, sign of irreverence, because then that gives the right wing, the Western right propaganda, like, the Muslims want special privilege, they want Islam to be treated specially. So I just wanted to hear thoughts on whether you think this should continue. They should continue doing this, or should they stop doing this?
Great question. So I think that as a progressive Muslim who has lived in Pakistan for many years, one thing that I've realized is, of course, there is, living in a Sharia-based, democratic constitution, put so many quotation marks around it. I don't even know what fit where. What happens is when stuff like that happens here in the US or in the UK, in Netherlands, I think this was like 15 years ago. I believe there was something that had happened in Denmark. When things like this happen, people are expressing how they feel about it, right? Whether it's coming from their personal experience, their background. In this panel, we have heard a lot of people with very various experiences from the Muslim community, right? So wherever it's coming from, you are putting it out there. You're trying to send a message to what you believe in, right? What that does, in my opinion, what I've seen is it puts a lot of people's life in danger. So when that happened in Denmark, somebody decided to draw, Prophet Muhammad's pictures and stuff like that and make a cartoon or something out of it. It was something along those lines. I was too little to even know. As a Muslim, I think that is, I'm not aligned with it. Just to make it very clear, like I'm not personally aligned with it, but somebody's doing it. I think them doing it wouldn't impact me either at the same time, right? It shouldn't impact me. But what happens is it's because of that right wing that you just mentioned, right? It's that right wing that takes it and flips it around and starts damaging property around. I've seen people started damaging cars. There was a strike in the city of Lahore. There was nothing moved, right? If they saw cars on outside, they started like damaging cars, destroying their own motherland in the name of, just because somebody decided to draw, Prophet's picture, right? So it causes a lot of damage. And, coming from a human rights perspective, it causes damage to the people who are not necessarily the ones expressing their ideas. So it causes violence because of that. Because somebody's trying to express their ideas, which most certainly they do have a freedom for it, but that has a very strong impact on the innocent lives that get injured, properties that get damaged, and people can even get killed because of the fact that we're doing this in the West. So we have to be very careful because those are the lives that are at danger at the most for this kind of stuff.
I just want to add a couple of things. So the Western, the right I was actually talking about was the Western right, which uses the reaction, like for example, when Claire gets these items recalled, these irreverent items recalled, the Western right says like Islam is untouchable. Like you can destroy Christianity all you want, but you can't touch Islam, and that they use that in their propaganda, in their to fight anti-Muslim bigotry, and also I think. Sorry, do you want to comment?
I do, yes.
Okay, yeah.
I wanted to say that like a lot of things, around marginalized communities, it's a very nuanced discussion because you want freedom of speech, of course, but you also don't want marginalized communities, which Muslims are a marginalized community in the U.S. You don't want them to get attacked, so you don't want to allow too much of that going on. But I think if it's intentional, it should be not censored, but it should be shut down. But I do think we go too far, like accidental, gibberish that looks like the name of God. I think that's too much.
Like the Nike sneaker.
Yeah, like
It's ridiculous.
that's really ridiculous, because then when we do that, when we recall products, then we send the message that, like Islam is untouchable, no one can do that. And that allows extremists to go and go kill people, and because we're telling them that they're right. I mean, I think that's the problem.
I'm going to say something because we face this problem in Muslimish a little bit internally in the group, because we have both Muslims and ex-Muslims. So ex-Muslims, we tend to be more, we like to make fun of religion, because, it's almost therapeutic. You had somebody who was oppressing you, and all of a sudden you can make fun of it now. So there is a benefit in that. But in the same time, we want to actually achieve real change. And in order to do that, you have to work with the majority, for better or worse, even if the majority is whatever it is. So you have to work with everyone, and it's one of the issues that have created problems internally in the group, because ex-Muslims want to joke about things and have Ramadan. We have Ramadan, where we have beginning of Ramadan, we have pork and wine, because we can. You can't kill us anymore. We can do whatever we want. So we do have that. There's this backlash, but at the same time, we want to be open to our Muslim friends who, for all practical purposes, would be considered atheists, but they still connect to Islam. They still want to have that fuzzy feeling that you get when you pray, or whatever it is that you get out of it. So we. I don't think we, I don't know where I'm going with this, because we don't have an answer to this, because it's still a problem that we are facing internally in the group, because whenever someone posts something that is too funny, or that's just, that it's very blasphemous, and it's a joke. It's clearly a joke. It's not an intellectual, it's just a joke. Some people take offense at that, but one of our very strict rules is freedom of discussion, freedom of speech. So we cannot censor that. So we will try to, as a moderator and as an organizer, which I hate being in that position, I have to this is, we have freedom of speech here, and at the same time, guys, this is, and I ask the people and I used to be like that, and now I'm less of trying to get a joke out of it, and more trying to achieve real change. And when I talk to, my very ex-Muslim friends, I say, what are we going to gain really when we do this? Are you really gaining anything except for a laugh? If we have a lot to gain by being able to work together, because by being able to work together, we can really change things. So I think it's a gradual process, and I think people, the longer people are able, I think part of the reason also people make these jokes is that they're almost testing the water, where they know what they can get away with, and after you do it for a while, it loses its interest. I used to do that. I used to make these jokes, and now I don't do it anymore, because it doesn't matter to me. I feel like it's more important to work towards a goal and work towards creating change and creating an alliance that's a strong alliance that can change things than laughing about a joke, no matter how funny it is. So that's where we are right now in Muslimish. I don't know if we're ever going to have an answer to this. Not everything has an answer, but I feel like from what I've seen, it's becoming a gradual. If you let people make the joke, after a while they're going to stop. The problem is that no one is allowed to say anything. A sneaker, nobody this doesn't say Allah. No, the designer didn't intend it to say Allah. It's just some crazy person. What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to everything I do? I have to worry about the craziest interpretation and the most extreme. And you're talking about people destroying their own country. Is that really the fault of the people who made the joke? If you draw Muhammad and someone destroys, starts burning shit and killing people, is that really the fault of the person who drew the cartoon, or the person who burned the bus? I don't, that's what I think. But I understand that, I think Muslims are like the babies of the world right now, and they need to just start like they're babies. Like, oh yeah, you can, yes you can do whatever you want. And if there was a God, maybe he would stop it, but there is no God. So maybe you should pray to your God to make that person stop. Maybe that you should do that instead of like burning shit down. Maybe you ask your God to stop it.
That was
Maybe the bus is like a burnt offering to God or something.
so to go back to that point. Yeah, burning the bus. No, that is an extreme. So I think what we really need to know is the difference between free speech and hate speech. Right? There is a defined line from when a free speech becomes hate speech.
True.
Right?
Yes.
The problem is oftentimes that so when we say Muslims, right? So that is an identity. So people, ex-Muslims joking about Muslims, it's often something that I guess
Clarification: we don't joke about Muslims; we joke about Islam.
Oh, okay. There you go. Thanks for clarification.
Yeah.
I don't know how to answer that. So because I don't know what level of joke it is, right? If it's like too shoving down the throat, trying to like make you believe that you're believing in the most horrible thing in the world, is when you have a freedom to express and believe in what you want to believe in. There is also a freedom that Muslims have to believe in the things that they want to believe in, right? So if I want to be progressive and be Muslim, nobody can tell me otherwise, right? So that's the defined line here. And I think that joking around part, I think that should really be something that is done within the boundaries, because when people become too comfortable, it's like, somebody who at some point, thought that they were queer and decided to then later on, live a straight life, so to say, and joke about like homosexuality or homosexuals, right? So that is taken as an offense. And it's not just in Muslim communities, it's often seen in other places too, where one group which has their identity have that joke, target towards them often seen as a threat, right? So when I speak for myself, I'm not speaking for all the Muslims. By no means I'm speaking for all the Muslims. I'm speaking for myself and what I believe in. And what Ehsan earlier mentioned is that there is things that she would mention, there's things that I mention, and it's the freedom of conscience, right? So there is things that she would mention that I agree with, and then there is things that she would mention that I might not necessarily relate with because I come from a different walk of life. So I think that having that level of respect is good. Think about it from a racial standpoint, right? When people becoming too comfortable with each other's races and, started calling each other names and what kind of stuff. And I don't think those kind of jokes are okay. They don't build community. Right? The person that you're cracking joke for is going to feel some type of way about it. It's going to have a bad impact. Again, your intention might not be bad, but the impact of it is very, very bad.
I just want to say, I think you can't really equate like race and ideology. I think those are two different things. And then I wanted to also say that, like, I think I used to do this too, and I probably still do it, like getting offended or drawing the line of the conversation at, this offends me, we can't talk anymore. I think that's really dangerous. Like, I think we cannot have productive discussions if we have to worry about getting offended. I think, you don't want to do it, like you said, you have to have a line of what is hate speech and what is just criticism or discussion, or jokes or whatever. But I think we can't draw that line at offensiveness, or taking offense.
I think that I'm not drawing the line for offense, so to say. I said that there is a defined line between free speech and hate speech, right? And my definition of that might be a little more conservative compared to my friends here from Muslimish, right? But I'm not like sitting here and, quoting verses from Quran or anything like that, or saying like, oh, you're wrong and you're wrong. Nobody wants to be told that they're wrong. Nobody likes to be criticized, right? Having able to communicate and build that communication comes after, months and years of community building. Once you have developed that comfort to have that community where they feel like they can have these kind of conversations with you and not be all up in each other's faces. It creates a safe environment. A few weeks ago, we had an event called Salam Shalom, which is in partnership, well, not in partnership, but it was an MPV Boston event where we brought people, our Jewish brothers and sisters, and we brought Muslims into the room and invited, various organizations, to talk about Islamophobia in Jewish communities and anti-Semitism in Muslim communities. Mm-hmm. And these are discussions that are not easy to have, right? Mm-hmm. It's not a black and white thing where we can say, oh, this is a line that you cannot cross and this is where it is. But if it offends somebody, personally, I don't take offense to it because I'm a type of person who is a, free thinker. I'm like, okay, well, that's what you want to believe in. That's what you want to believe in. You want to change me? Good luck with that. You know what I mean? That's what I believe in. This is mine. This is me. This is who I am. You can't take that away from me. Mm-hmm. But there is people in the room that were, uncomfortable with certain discussions. And then there were people in the room that were just like, okay, this is just another conversation that we are having. Yes, I agree with you with the fact that having these conversations with Muslims especially is very difficult. Everything, a lot of preachers preach them that you cannot even ask a question. Mm-hmm. Criticism is way far out in the bubble. Right? So this defined line it varies from person to person. And I think that to take offense to that, I personally wouldn't. But, again, we all human and we have our own identities and we have our own personalities. There is some people that are more sensitive than the others, right? So when I'm having these conversations about progressiveness in Islam and how I look at it, right, with some of the people, they take offense to that. And I'm just like, oh, wow. You know what I mean? Like, instead of looking at it from the green light, you're looking at it from red light. But to them, that's what it is. And that's what they're going to believe in. So we have to just, it's what you said, Iman, that we have to allow people to be able to have that dialogue in a healthy way, right? So maybe starting off with the dialogue that is healthy, where nobody takes offense to things. And it's like, okay, we're all friends here sitting on a panel. You know what I mean? And we have different views, and that is okay to have different views. Differences are not always negative, right? And that's the challenge that we're dealing with right now.
This is interesting. There was one point in the prior question that I wanted to cover, which is the religious abuse part. I didn't say anything towards that, and it seems like it's still within this theme of religious abuse and how people who have been subjected to religious abuse are more and more afraid to speak about their choices and their differences, and more sensitive to criticism as well. And religious abuse hits the person in their mental health, right? And when we were talking about solutions before to how are we going to help people who have been subjected to religious abuse, we mentioned therapy, right? And we also know that going to a therapist is a privilege in this country, right? If you have insurance, you would still pay like $60 an hour for a 45-minute session. If you don't, it goes up to $200, $250. And to me, what is the role of our discussion in all this is being more solution-driven. Once you start to look at the issues out there from a perspective of, sometimes it can look like simple economics, but it's also marginalization, That if you have within your community a marginalization of LGBTQ communities, within your community a marginalization of women, a marginalization of people with disabilities, then how are you going to be able to solve a problem that a whole nation is suffering from? That, you know, that everybody should have this right to healthcare and all these issues we're talking about in terms of having the right to have that therapy, to heal. A lot of us who came from outside the US, or you know, those who are in here suffering from either their parents forcing them to go into therapies, conversion centers, right? These are versions of religious abuse that we live in the United States of America. And we need to start to think proactively, take this dialogue into action, into what can we do together so that we can actually solve these, you know, help people live a peaceful life and a life with dignity and a life with choice. So, you know, a lot of the work that we do either as, you know, Muslim progressives or Islamish or all these, or CARE, all these organizations have an intent to help others, right? Have an intent to help others better their lives so that we can have stronger communities. This dialogue is important and this dialogue is welcomed. And, you know, as Kandil mentioned, it's important that we are aware of what constitutes criticism from hate speech, right? Because hate speech creates more mental health problems for folks who are going to go untreated and who's going to turn into PTSD and who's going to turn into a crime, right? Or into addiction to opioids. So we have to be, we have to hold ourselves accountable in how we approach. Do we approach a discussion by uniting and inviting and including and accepting? Or do we approach a discussion by creating otherness? The more we create otherness, the more we exile people out of the table and out of the room. We have to create that positive dialogue that will make people comfortable enough to walk into a room where the discussion doesn't 100% agree with their beliefs or with their thinking. So that is important. In America, I believe the only profits that we're not allowed to speak about are the earned profits of the uber rich. Anything else you can speak about. You can wear Allah and walk into the bathroom. You can be Muslim today, not Muslim tomorrow. I remember my mother used to tell me, don't wear a necklace that has the Quran in it when you're going into the bathroom. You have to take it off. And I would tell her, but I'm connected all the time. I'm a spiritual being, right? And even for me, like when I say God, I don't have a definition of what that is. Part of my faith is that it's so broad and it's not something it's not a thing. Some people find that power within themselves. Some people find it in trees or in a woman or in something else. So it is, to me, it's what links us as a people. It's what empowers us as a people. It's that love. It's the peace. It's that what it is that fires us up every day to fight for so that we can live free. That is the faith for me. That's where my spirituality guides me. So I would wear whatever necklace and go wherever I want with it. I actually have one that says, in your body is a good place to be. And that sentence was said by a woman who is of a different faith and who believes that however our bodies are, however shaped they are, whatever identities we are, whatever pain we've touched in our lives or experienced in our lives, it is still, in these bodies, is a good place to be so that we can be positive and walk forward and upward together. Thank you.
So Quran jeans are fine?
What was that?
So like Quran jean, like a Quranic imprint on jeans is would it be something you'd wear?
I think if it's something that you believe in and you really want to wear it in a cool way or however you want to express yourself, you should be able to. It's this, we live the free life. And if anything, it's great marketing.
Love
I
it.
mean, those doormats are quite beautiful. They have nice calligraphy on it. If you were gonna make a doormat with Quranic verses like for marketed towards like anti-Muslim bigots, you'd probably put it in English or some language they understand.
Maybe you can use it to fundraise.
All right, so I think we are getting a bit ahead in time. So I'd like to thank all.
Do you want to ask anybody have a question?
Any questions from the audience apart from? I've got very many here.
We have one right here.
Oh yes.
How could someone that is LGBTQ plus stay with their religion if it questions them as a person? Do you know what I mean? How could they stay with their religion if it says they're sinning and they will go to hell?
Can I give a response? So this is my personal belief, right? And again, it's under that idea of we're free to interpret, we're free to believe whatever makes us feel peaceful in the world. To me, identity is our spectrum. Okay? To me, it doesn't go into male or female. It's whatever your life guides you, its degrees and its experiences and being exposed to different people is really one of call it a scientific creation about all the other creations, all the other creations. So if somebody comes to me and says, you're a Muslim and in Islam you can't be LGBTQ, my response to that is that no one has the right to tell me what Islam is about or not about. Okay? So it is my faith. I chose to believe in this faith. There was a period in my life when I came to the US and I was going to fast Ramadan for the first time. And everybody at Boston University was meeting at the cafeteria for schoolwork, for extracurricular activities and everything. And everybody was eating. And it was the first time in my life that I experienced that. And at first I was surprised and I was like, how am I going to be able to fast? And I'm going to be hungry and am I going to be able to eat? But then what I found is that when people are homeless on the street and don't have food and everybody else walking around drinking their coffees and in the morning and eating their donuts, those hungry people on the streets are watching and they're hungry and nobody is helping them and society has let them down. And even those who are hungry in their homes, right, working 2 jobs every day and taking care of their elderly and they're disabled and have children and still can't put food on the table, that is everybody's responsibility. That's societal responsibility for why those people can't put food on the table. So my only taste of hunger around the cafeteria full of food is nothing compared to the real experience, right? So that is how I took what is fasting. I didn't take it as some of the other interpretations, which is if you don't fast, you're gonna go to hell. Right? I don't do things out of fear. I do things out of love and out of peace. I don't think about hell and heaven. I believe that my life and my walk on this earth every day is way more important. What I leave behind me, when I'm dead, I have absolutely no control. But when I leave, what I leave behind me is the only thing that's going to stay of me. And that is how I guide my life. So if I am LGBTQ, if I'm a queer person, right? I still want to be a Muslim, and I am, and that is my faith, and that is my identity. I will not allow anybody on this earth to take that away from me. I will not allow anybody from this earth to tell me if 2 men are allowed to marry or not. That is their right. I will go to their wedding. I would get certified and marry them. Okay? So that's my faith. My faith is beautiful. And I love it.
I think that whole thing about you can't be LGBT and have a faith is something that comes from the cultural aspect of it. I think that if you look at the history of various civilizations, you would see that this is not a new concept. This is not a new westernized, so to say, ideology or the way of life or whatever else people call it, right? People that existed at different spots in the spectrum of masculinity, femininity, and same thing follows with what their sexual orientation is, has existed since the beginning of mankind, right? Whether it's Adam or Eve or Adam and Steve or even Aisha, who knows, right? So whatever it is, there is always going to be this difference of opinion, right? And this is where I would say it becomes a little challenging to have these conversations with people to make them think outside of the box, right? I often tell them, God does not make mistakes. So if you have problems with the way we are, then you have problems with the Creator, right? So that makes me question your faith. It flips it the other way around. I'm like, wait, how can you be Muslim and judgmental? It's all cultural, misogynistic and patriarchal culture that has created people to think that way, whereas I think Allah is or Islam is very accepting of who you are, and it's inclusive of who you are, right? It's just the way you interpret things, right?
So why some people are gays and they still believe because religion contradict with being homosexual. So I want to say there is two types of people who can leave religion and people who can't. So people who choose to leave the religion and people who choose to stay in the religion because the religion is very important. It provides spirituality. Some people they think it provides moral too. Some people they can't see morals outside religion. That's how we grow up. And even some people they see in religion consolidation and they see belonging. You belong to something. So religion is still very important. So if you want today in this country, if you want to make money, you need to learn about Wall Street. You can't make money without learning about Wall Street. Even if you have gold, even if you have... So religion now still has very important role in the world. So that's why people, they have to belong to some religion. Islam or Jewish or Christianity. So even in Morocco, in Egypt, in Saudi, they will kill you. At the moment when you say I am gay, they will kill you. Okay? You can't be yourself in Morocco or Algeria or somewhere. Okay? Let's be clear about that. You can't be yourself. But here in the United States, we have this luxury. So you can whatever you want. You can be a traditional Muslim or you can be a progressive Muslim. So far, nobody of shuyukh, shuyukh, imams, people who they don't recognize progressive Muslims. They call them non-Muslims. They call them kafir. Okay? And they will kill you. They will kill you. If you say they will kill you if you want that. But here in the United States, you can make it a thing. And maybe one day we will have two kinds of Islam. The classic Islam and the progressive Islam. And we will have shuyukh of the first Islam and shuyukh of the progressive Islam. I have some friends from this kind of Islam. We have nothing to blame progressive Muslims about it. They are trying to moderate Islam, to reform it. They can do it in United States, they can do it in Europe, they just can't do it in Islamic, they can't do it in Azhar, they can't do it in Hajj, you can't. You can't go to Hajj and say, oh, let's do some progressive, what they call it, tawaf? Yeah, let's do some progressive circumcision, let's do some progressive killing animals, you can't, okay? But you can make a progressive Islam. This version is possible. It's possible. It's just not recognizable yet. Okay? They don't have something official to say yes, we have this Islam, and it's recognizable. And yes, you are going to do Jannah. Everyone will go. Look, we are Muslim, and you are Muslims. We both go into Jannah. We both go into heaven. You can't hear that. They don't recognize Shia. Sunnah, they say Shia are not Muslim, and Shia, they say Sunnah are not Muslim. So, and talking about making fun of others. That's what religion about. What about? Religions, they make fun of others. Muslims, they make fun of Christians. Christians make fun of Muslims. I will not mention Jewish at all. So, yeah, Jewish, they make fun of Muslim. Muslim, they make fun of Jewish. Okay? And they kill each other too. So, but religion is something important, and some people, they can't live without religion. I am trying, but it's hard. I was trying to reform Islam, I couldn't. So it's easy to create a new, it's more easy to create a new religion than to reform Islam. That's my opinion.
So you decided to take the easier way, Saeed. So just a counter narrative to that, and I'm pretty sure a lot of my friends from Muslimish might not agree with that. Is that when we talk about these regimes, these governments, treating LGBT people a certain way. So if it's something, it's the Muslims killing them, right? The people killing them, not the God killing them. So if there was so much lack of inclusion coming from the context, it's people killing people and using religion as a tool. I don't think it is something that there is no particular message that is coming from God to allow people to do that, right? It's the people making decision. So that answers your question that of course, you can be whoever you want to be, but of course, there's people out there that would prevent you from being you.
Yeah, that's probably the first thing today that I disagree with, like straight disagree with. It's not just the people doing it. They're doing it because it's in the text. There's text there. People would there are lots of texts there that says that that's what should be done. So it's not just the people, it's the text and it's the religion. I think the people are better than the religions. I think the people are going to try to avoid doing that as much as possible. But sometimes you can't run away from the text. There's a lot of people who try to reform. They try to take even hadith, not even the Quran. Let's not even the hadith. There's a lot of things in the hadith that are just batshit crazy. Like if you saw a donkey that he saw a devil, and there's a lot of things about jinn and the black cats and the black dogs and some crazy wacky stuff that is so primitive that it's ridiculous. And that stuff is the reason that people are committing these things. It's not the people, it's the text and it's the religion. And I really disagree with that part.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So we have to really, we have to really wake up here. It's not even the people. It's oppressive governments, oppressive power. It's money.
And it has nothing to do with people. The people are being manipulated through, different interpretations of different texts, different hadith, this saint say this and this guy say this and follow this and follow that. Why? Because at the end of the day, when there is a war between the Shiites and the Sunnis, or when there's a war between any two countries, those who benefit are the ones who produce the weapons. Those who benefit are the ones who sit at the top and have, golden baths and golden toilets. Those are the ones who benefit. None of the people who die or who survive those wars benefit from anything. And we have seen countries go down. We have seen people die. We see every day bloodshed. And we see every day how, big corporate businesses get all the money out of that. That's why we need to wake up. And that's why we need to start thinking about how to unite. For me, as a Muslim, I'm also a Jewish person. I'm also a Christian, okay? Those are part of my faith. My husband, his mother is Jewish, his dad is Irish, his dad's parents are half Catholic, half Protestant. It keeps going. But do we sit and say, hey, well, we can't really love each other because, please don't speak while I'm speaking. We can't, we create love out of that. We create unity out of that, and we create respect of choice. Okay, this is why my vision for this world is that we step away from the otherness and we step into collective power.
I'm gonna give you 3 examples.
I think we have a question.
Yeah, but I just want to say something.
Sure.
I will give you 3 examples of people where there's no government that benefited of anything. Do you know about Bangladeshi bloggers that were hacked to death in the streets? There are Bangladeshi bloggers that were hacked to death in the streets because of a Facebook post. How about the 9/11 hijackers? The leader of that group was doing his PhD in German engineering. That's not a government that's benefiting from anything. The guy who, there's so many examples. And the text, if you put the text out there and you tell 1.5 billion people around the world, this is the word of the creator of the universe, some of them are going to take it for what it says. And it says terrible things. And I have the book right here. I can bring the Quran and I can show you what it says. So the text, you cannot ignore it. If you keep saying this is the most perfect book and this is the most perfect this and that, someone is going to follow it. And that's the problem. We have to, in my opinion, we have to say that this is wrong and why it's wrong. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to solve the problem. I'm interested in solving the issue.
Well, first of all, I'm glad that we finally have a disagreement over something. Now I'm finally starting to believe that there is 2 different organizations in this room, right? Muslims and Muslimish and Muslims for Progressive Values. So after 4 hours of sitting in the same room, I'm glad that we're having a peaceful disagreement. To go back to that, there is some people that are going to take it to extreme, right? So now let's take a step back and, some things that are highlighted that the text is saying this and text is saying that. I don't know how many of you have watched, but there is a documentary by Paresh Sharma on Netflix. It's called The Sinner in Mecca, who is an openly queer identified person who goes for a Hajj and then goes through the entire Hajj. So if the context is really against it, right? He is in the so-called, the pilgrimage journey, and he gets out of it, right? So I think that speaks for itself, and I don't need to highlight on this topic any further. I think that we have a question here, and I think we're running out of time, so let's take that.
Let's take the last question. I have a comment, just to answer gentlemen. you cannot be a Muslim and defend LGBTQ unless you take the chapter where it says a man can ولا تأتوا الرجال شهوة من دون النساء. It's a chapter in Quran. Unless you take that one out, you can call yourself Muslim. And I have a question for you. Have you ever practiced prayers using Surah Lut, the chapter that they are mentioning? It would be a challenge for you to identify as Muslim and reject part of the Quran where supposedly who created you instructed you never to sleep with another man. I haven't finished it.
I'm gonna wait.
Back to you. The problem for a Muslim is that they confuse their own values that they grow up with, that their mother taught them, that they saw in the culture that they grow up. They confuse those values with Islam. And they think that Islam is what they were raised on. Like, for example, Moroccan growing, you think that Moroccan culture reflects Islam. It doesn't. You need to know that Islam adjusted to the culture of Morocco. That's why a gay man in Morocco might not be executed by the state, but people still beat him up because they believe in the truth of Islam, which is the teaching of Muhammad. I want to make another comment about the hijab. The hijab, if I see someone with the hijab, it communicates to me that that person says to me that she is a free woman. The same way that Muhammad and Umar instructed their women at the time to wear the headscarf, to distinguish themselves from slaves. And talking about the slaves at the time, there were slaves who are Muslims and slaves who are not Muslims. Both of them were in the market for sale. Some of them with just a string, no clothing at all. The hijab is a sign of discrimination against those who are not Muslims. Let's say putting a headscarf is a way to tell other people, to demonize other people and tell them, I am better than you. I am brought with these values of Islam that puts me above you. You are a slave, I am a free woman. And that's how Umar and Muhammad come to the conclusion to create the verse when it says, oh, believe in women, put something on your head, so that other men wouldn't harass you when you go out to do the needs in the nature. That's the one.
I think that might be enough to unpack for
Yeah.
a while.
So, for your first point of how, that if somebody is a member of the LGBTQA+ community, then therefore they're not Muslim. In Islam, there is absolutely no verse and nothing in the faith that says that a human being can decide what is the faith of somebody else. That a human being can actually include or exclude somebody else based on their identity. So to say to somebody who's gay or queer or any identity, you're not Muslim because you identify as blah, or that is not Muslim in itself. That is not one of the values, one of the core values of our faith, is to recognize people as they are. And another thing in our faith is that we're all equal. We only differ by our level of faith, right?
What is your source?
I'm sorry?
Where do you get that? What is your source?
I don't need to give you a source.
I just give you a chapter. I just told you Surah Lut from the chapter.
Right.
It says exactly وَلَا تَأْتُوا النِّسَاءَ وَلَا تَأْتُوا الرِّجَالَ شَهْوَةً مِنْ دُونِ النِّسَاء. Don't sleep with the men other than women.
What does the Quran, since you know the Quran, so what does the Quran say about men harassing women on the street?
It encourages it. It says if you saw, and Umar gave an example.
No, I'm talking about this, you're talking about the scripture.
Can you tell me from the scripture some part that says that men are allowed to harass women in the street?
It should be Quran
Besides the
says
point,
this.
though.
Change what it doesn't fit the teaching of Islam.
You don't have there's no verse, there's nothing that says that men are allowed to harass women on the street. And there's nothing that's, and the same thing. So you're saying that anybody who harasses a woman on the street, therefore they're not Muslim.
No, they learn that.
Anybody who doesn't do what Islam says, or however it's being interpreted, or however it's being pushed down onto people, then they're not Muslim. And that my point is that the Muslim faith is a free faith where you can choose for yourself where you want to be. You have the choice to accept how it's being pushed on people, or you have the choice to create your own, define your own faith, right? But it is an identity, and it is an identity that I enjoy, and it is an identity that I fight for. And it is an identity that I believe that LGBTQ communities, if they decide to be Muslim, they are Muslim and they're not sinners, okay? So you can choose, right? You can read Rumi and feel like this is great and this makes me feel great. Or you can, if you want to read scripture that, that encourages certain things that you disagree with, you can still read it and say, you know what, I disagree with this part. There's nothing wrong with questioning. As I say, before Islam existed, there was Judaism, and Judaism encourages questioning. That's one of the things that I actually learned from the Jewish communities here in America that I enjoy every year, is to sit and question. Is it right? And why is it right? And if it isn't right, come out and speak about it. Just like we're speaking here and saying, it isn't right to exclude LGBTQ from the Muslim faith because nobody has the right to define anybody's faith or decide for them whether they're in it or not in it. You can create your own group and say, you guys are out. But I can point out and say, you're being exclusive, you're being unjust, you're being inhumane, and that is not my faith, and you don't get to take it away from me.
Okay, can make a concern.
I will make it for you. I will make it for you. I know what you are talking about. So, okay.
Sorry, I think this is Surah
I will talk, and you can talk later. You can ask Suhan. I will talk. So, I admire you, what you are doing. I admire progressive Muslims, okay? I'm with you 100%, okay? I mean, you are doing great job, okay? So, but some people, they want to know what Islam really, not your Islam. Your Islam is good. I know what your Islam about. It's the values above everything, okay? But the other Islam, the Islam that everyone follow and know from Quran and Sunnah, because other Muslims in like Shia, you can follow the Quran, Sunnah, they don't care about Sunnah. But Sunni Muslims, they follow the Quran and the Sunnah. And in the Quran and in the Sunnah, there is Bukhari, Muslim, many. So, in the Quran, what said? They believe that the Quran from God, from Allah, the word of Allah. That's what they believe. Not like Jewish. Jewish people, they evaluate the debate. The debate, it's something very, very important in Jewish religion. Not with Muslims. With Muslims, وَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Everything is in the Quran, everything in the Sunnah, there is no debate. That's the first thing. The second thing, in the Quran never talk to women. Never. He talk to men, and he tell them what they tell women. And I will say, يا أيها الذين آمنوا يا أيها النبي قل لأزواجك وبناتك ونساء المؤمنين. The Prophet, hi Prophet, say to your women, your other Muslims women to put scarf. Okay? So that's what the Quran said. And ذلك أدنى أن يعرفن فلا يؤذين. That's so they can be recognizable
and they don't get harassed in the street. Because people used to harass other women. So Omar came with this idea. He didn't came. Omar was a Jewish. He was following the Jewish tradition. There is nothing in the Quran talking about circumcision. Nothing. Muhammad wasn't circumcision. Muhammad didn't perform the circumcision. And none of his Sahaba, none of them performed the circumcision. But now, every Muslim have to do it. Okay? Has to do it. So, Omar was a Jewish. He was following the Jewish the Old Testament. Muhammad was in love with Christianity. So we have two references here. And Omar, the Jewish used to treat women as we know. It's less than men. So that's what we see now. And there is, in Islam, there is a Quran for free people and a Quran. So the Quran doesn't talk to slaves and doesn't talk to women. They are not human enough. So all Quran is talking about free people, men. The Quran didn't say anything about what women will get in Jannah. Nothing. The Quran didn't say anything about slave except Muhammad said it. And Abdul Abiq, the slave who run away from his master, his prayer will not be accepted until he come back to his slave. So, the hijab was a tool to separate slaves from free women. Because you can harass a slave. It's just a slave. You see, $200 a slave. That's how much it costs. It's like a sheep. It's like a chicken. It's okay to harass slaves. It's okay to rape them. It's okay. It was okay. They changed it later. So, I understand why some people don't see progressive Muslims or progressive Islam as something legitimate. I understand that, but I support them. I believe that religion and culture can give us something different every time. Islam, it didn't start as a new religion. Islam started as a way to unify Judaism, Christianity, and Sabia. That's how Islam started. Someone came and said, Muhammad, Ahl al-Kitab. Who is Ahl al-Kitab? These three fights. And even in the Quran. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ هَادُوا وَالصَّابِينَ وَالنَّصَارَى. Christians, Jewish, and Sabia, you are going to heaven. Just follow my words. And even in the Quran, follow the words, follow the Torah, follow the Injil. Muhammad didn't come up with a new Sharia. Muhammad didn't make anything allowed. Anything. Omar who made laws. Okay. So Omar who made laws, not Muhammad. Muhammad didn't make anything at all. Maybe 3 laws, 4 laws. But Omar who made a lot of laws, and now it's an Islam. So what I want to say, yes, you can create your religion. It will start as Islam, progressive Muslim, and will end up as Ihsanist. Ihsanist? Yeah, Ihsanist.
Oh my God.
Prophet Islam.
Yeah. And she was women for the
And it
first.
would be a better religion than Islam.
Well, I hope you're having a laugh out of that. You look like you're enjoying it.
Yeah, it's good, team. I will help you.
So, listen, without any mockery, it's important that we point out the main point of what I'm saying, which is the freedom of interpretation, the freedom of choose what you want, choose what suits you, the freedom of putting our values first. That is how I view my Islam. And whether you feel like you want to take away the Islam word from it, that's my identity, and nobody's going to take that away from me. If I stand and say, I am Muslim, and I will marry the LGBTQ community within the Islamic faith and give them their certificate of marriage, right? I am Muslim, and nobody's going to put next to it anything progressive or non-Muslim or secular or anything. That's my identity. It's my right as a human being, and however I want to identify with it is my freedom.
And I am a woman.
I can be whatever I want.
Yeah,
I can
me
be,
too.
I
I'm a
can be
woman.
called they. Okay, if I decide to be called they tomorrow, then that's going to be my identity, and nobody's going to exclude me based on that. I will not allow somebody to exclude me based on that. Whether in recognizing that in other countries or in other faiths, people are being oppressed, people are being manipulated, people are being jailed, and that is traumatic, and that is something that is, is heartbreaking and is upsetting. The same way goes into the other direction. If you start to tell people, if you're not this definition, then you're not Muslim, then what you're doing is that you're oppressing them and you're taking away their liberties.
Yes.
My liberty is to define my faith however I want and call it whatever I want. If I say I am a Muslim and I will drink alcohol and I will fast and I will pray only 2 times a day and I will pray in my sleep, however I want to define what suits my soul, I define it however I want. I will call that Islam if I want to. After all, we live in America, we live in a free country, and this is a place where, we have to stand up to any bigotry and hate. We're here for peace, we're here for inclusion, we're here for acceptance. That is the message, and that's the message that I want to resonate with everybody who's listening today. Thank you.
All right, I think we
May I?
have to wrap up with you.
I'll be quick.
Okay, so wait.
I just want to say, Ihsan, I think that is really nice, but it's a privilege of being here.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that the majority of Muslims, if you go to 90% of the world's Muslim countries, you cannot define Islam that way. And Islam is defined by the people, and it's unfortunately defined by the majority of people.
There are people in those countries who define Islam in the way they want, but the fact that it's not recognized by other groups doesn't really matter in my faith, because the recognition comes from the self. I'm not looking for religiosity, I look for spirituality and recognition within the self. What I look for is peace, so that nobody would tell me what ought to be and what ought not to be when it comes to my identity and my faith. I do have the privilege here to sit at this table and say this. I know that in my country, when I was in my country, I didn't have that privilege. I didn't have the privilege to even question anything, even as a child. And I recognize those traumatic experiences and the struggle that so many people are going through every day in those communities, knowing that they are Muslim, and that if they say, this is the Muslim I am, they will get hurt and they will lose their lives to it. That doesn't make Islam, how I see it and how I identify with it, an evil religion. What it makes it is an inclusive religion where I recognize everybody in the world who wants that freedom and who wants to go out in the street and say, this is my freedom. And I hope that just as I sit here and enjoy this privilege, also knowing that it's not a privilege anymore, because there are hate groups in America who have been hating Muslims no matter how progressive you are. So let's be very clear here that threats happen to people in America, okay? I have seen threats here in America as a Muslim, as a progressive Muslim. But to finish my thought, I do recognize the hurt, and I stand here as an activist and as a fighter to say in the face of any hate or bigotry that I am a Muslim, and I'm proud of the way I am a Muslim and my identity as a Muslim, however I identify.
These are all still besides
Thank
the
you.
point. It's still besides the point. It is. Like, you can define it however you want, but the reality is how the world is viewing it is not. You have your own personal definition, and that's fine. But we have to say that's your definition.
Sorry, if religion is a social construct, then doesn't it require some
Exactly.
consent from society in some way, at least?
No, I think that, well, first of all, I would like to clarify one of our gentlemen's verse that he quoted about Surah Lut, which says men sleeping with other men. Basically, that surah, if you read it, and I don't need anybody's validation, but if you really look at the context of it, it actually refers to men who were sexually assaulting other men and forcefully doing it. So there is no contradictory context that describes the love or goes against it. But anyways, one thing that some of our friends think that here we're doing is redefining Islam. Like, no, we are here. We're just sharing our experiences and our identities as who we are as progressive Muslims. And while there is different practices in the world, and people not necessarily that they're living under certain regimes and under certain governments, in so-called man-made Sharia, I don't think that defines our faith for us. It doesn't. It defines that government. It defines that policy. It defines that procedure of who it is. So and in all, let's take a step back here. I think with our friends from Muslimish here, I think a lot of what I'm hearing is some traditionalist ideologies, right? So I'm seeing people that are looking at it from like the literal concept of what it is, right? So my question is, if that's the way it is, it's the exact opposite of how a lot of people with who would take the context for literal meaning. We have to look at it who it pertains to. If it says dear Muhammad, it doesn't. We're not prophets. Okay, it pertains to Muhammad. If it says Lut, it's referring to Qawm Lut. It's not referring to all of us. So let's have that distinguish here. But I think that with that, I would like to say thanks for having us. Thanks for having Progressive Muslims. And this is the reason why we are Progressive Muslims and you are Muslimish. Right? This is the reason why we are two different organizations and we are two different... Right?
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, we're still, again, we're here representing so many people, who might agree, might not agree with us. I wanted to, say thank you for the panelists, to the panelists for coming here, and thank you, Secular Society, for hosting us. Again, I hope this is a table of unity and not of otherness. We will continue the dialogue, I'm sure, and I'm really glad to have met you guys, and thank you for bringing up your insight into the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I want to bring it back to a point that we both agree on, just so we can end on something we agree on, is that we don't want that traditionalist view to be the norm. We both want to move away from that and move to a more understanding community and more understanding society and more accepting. We just have two different ways of dealing with it. And I think if we can get past that and work towards the goal, I think that would be really good, because we have a lot of, in Muslims, we have a lot of alliances with other groups that are atheist in nature, that are secular in nature, that have left the religion, but very few alliances with groups that still identify with Islam, and I think we need to create these alliances. And we've worked in New York with Muslims for Progressive Values we shared a community Eid event for like LGBT people in New York. And I hope that we can continue to work together in all the cities that we're in New York and Boston, all the cities. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for allowing this discussion to happen, because this is a good discussion. Whether we agree on it or not, it's great that we're actually able to have this discussion. It's rare, and I'm happy that we're here and we're having this, and I hope that we can be able to work together more.
Well, on that note, we will have We will have an event that we would welcome you to. It's first Friday iftar.
We'll give you details.
Yeah, we'll give you some more details. And I was invited to lead the prayer as a woman, and it's, I'm really happy
that's
that.
I would join.
Please.
I haven't prayed in years.
All right, that's awesome. Thank you. We welcome you. Yeah. No, I'm saying
Don't you have another conference coming up in New York?
Yes, we this year we're having 4 conferences. This is the first of them. We have 3 small ones and the big one is going to be in Chicago. So the next conference is going to be in New York in June 28th in Hunter College. It's going to be a local conference, but we have a big chapter in New York, so it should be good. The big conference, our national conference this year, we're going to do it for the first time in Chicago. We're trying to promote the group. We're starting a group there. We've had attempts to start a group, but they haven't been successful because we keep losing our organizer. They keep flying somewhere else. So we finally have a good organizer there now. We're trying to build a group in Chicago. We're going to have our big conference there in August. And then in October, we're going to have our final conference of the year in Detroit, in Dearborn, Michigan. Biggest Arab American community in the world outside the Middle East. And we have a good group there that's been there from the beginning. And I hope you can join us or tell your friends about these events. And if you have Muslimish friends, if you have people who invited to the group, we need to grow because that's how we're going to be able to achieve our goals. And that's how we're going to be able to, force that discussion to happen because it's not going to happen on its own. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. That's the end of our event. And I'm sorry we cannot continue the dialogue further. I'm sure there are many questions and we wanted to, I certainly had a lot more questions. The night is winding down. We're going to clean up and then we're going to head out for some dinner and drinks kind of thing. So if some people want to hang out with us and continue talking, welcome to. Thank you, Muslims for Progressive Values, and of course our sponsor and organizer, Muslimish.
Yeah, do you hug? Yeah, I usually ask you. Do you hug?
Yeah.
Do you hug? No, I don't. Since when? Just 5 minutes ago, it was cameraman get a hug. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for listening to Muslimish Freethinkers. Do let us know what you think of this episode at facebook.com/Muslimish. Don't forget to visit us at muslimish.org.